In a quiet cul-de-sac in Dallas, Mark Bennett carried a bouquet of red roses across his front yard. He wasn't flashy, just a working man trying to win back some peace at home. But before he could say a word, his wife, Lauren, snatched the flowers, walked to the curb, and tossed them into the trash. Neighbors watering their lawns stopped mid-spray. One even pulled out a phone. Mark stood frozen, humiliated in broad daylight. The question wasn't just why she did it. It was what she was hiding. What happened next will turn their neighborhood into a stage no one expected. Mark Bennett wasn't the kind of man who drew attention. In Dallas, neighbors knew him as the reliable electrician who showed up on time, fixed their wiring without overcharging, and waved politely as he left. His pride came from quiet consistency, mowing the lawn on Sundays, grilling in the backyard, and paying bills on time. That's why the flower incident shook the neighborhood. People who respected him now whispered behind fences, questioning what really went on in his marriage. For Mark, humiliation wasn't just public, it was personal, and he felt it was only the beginning. Lauren hadn't always been this way. When she and Mark first married, she was warm, playful, and proud to stand beside him. But over the last year, her tone had grown sharp, her affection distant. She blamed stress from long shifts at the hospital, but the excuses rang hollow. She spent more nights away, kept her phone close, and brushed him off with cold remarks. After tossing his flowers in the trash, her distance no longer felt like stress, it felt like contempt. And the neighbors had seen it too. Humiliation was spreading like wildfire. It wasn't long before Mark started hearing a name he'd never cared about before, Dr. Peterson. A senior physician at Lauren's hospital, he appeared more and more often in casual mentions, then in hushed whispers. Mark had seen late-night calls pop up with that name, but dismissed them as work emergencies. Now a neighbor quietly mentioned spotting Lauren stepping out of Peterson's car well after midnight. The flowers in the trash suddenly felt like more than humiliation, they were a message. Mark wasn't just dealing with coldness anymore. He might be facing something far worse. Mark began noticing things he could no longer ignore. Lauren changed the lock screen on her phone, claiming it was for security. She started dressing differently for work, slipping into new outfits he'd never seen her buy. She stayed late more often, snapping if he asked why. The roses in the trash weren't just rejection, they were a declaration, made in front of witnesses. Every detail built on the next, painting a picture he couldn't escape. Neighbors whispered more boldly now, pity in their eyes. Mark felt trapped between denial and a truth too heavy to face. One evening, as Mark sat on his porch replaying the shame in his head, Mrs. Alvarez from next door approached quietly. She was elderly, soft-spoken, and never one for gossip, but her words carried weight. She told Mark she had seen Lauren more than once at a downtown hotel, always stepping out quickly, always looking over her shoulder. The news hit him like a hammer. Mrs. Alvarez wasn't cruel. She was concerned. If she noticed, then others must have too. Mark realized this wasn't rumor anymore. It was truth closing in, and now he had to act. That night, Mark sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open and his hands trembling. He scrolled through their joint bank account, and the truth lit up the screen. Hotel charges. More than once, more than twice. Each one matching the nights Lauren had claimed she was working late. His chest tightened as he printed the statements, the paper sliding out like evidence in a trial. The flowers in the trash no longer stung compared to this. Now he wasn't just humiliated, he was betrayed, and Mark knew the time for pretending was almost over. Friday night came, and Lauren never walked through the door. No call, no message, just silence. Mark sat in the living room, the clock ticking louder with every passing hour. The driveway stayed empty, the night stretched long, and humiliation twisted into something darker. He thought about driving to the hospital, but deep down he knew she wasn't there. By dawn he was still awake, staring at the hollow space beside him. That night, something inside him broke. The man who endured quietly was gone, and a different Mark was beginning to take shape. The next morning, unable to hold back, Mark drove by the hospital. His stomach turned when he spotted Dr. Peterson's car parked near the entrance. Moments later, Lauren stepped out of the passenger side, laughing, dressed in clothes Mark had never seen before. Her hand brushed the doctor's arm, as if they'd done it 100 times. Mark froze behind the wheel, his world narrowing to that single image. The roses in the trash suddenly seemed like the opening act. This was the main show, and it was happening in the open for anyone to see. That night, Lauren came home as if nothing had happened. She smiled faintly, set a pan on the stove, and asked about his day like it was any other evening. Mark sat at the table, silent, watching her every move. She thought her secret was safe, that her performance erased the whispers and the evidence piling up. Mark didn't challenge her. Not yet. He let her believe the act was working. But behind his quiet eyes, a plan was forming, and when it unfolded, Lauren would have no idea what was coming. Mark couldn't shake the feeling there was more. Late that night, he opened their accounts again, scrolling past the hotel charges. That's when he saw it, large transfers leaving their savings, all directed to Dr. Peterson's private clinic. Thousands of dollars gone. His hard-earned money funding another man's failing business. Betrayal was one thing, but theft made it worse. Lauren hadn't just rejected him as a husband, she had gutted their future. The flowers in the trash had been her way of saying she was finished. Now Mark held proof she had destroyed everything they built. Mark knew anger wouldn't win. Evidence would. He gathered the printed statements, every hotel charge, every transfer, and slipped them into a folder. Instead of confronting Lauren behind closed doors, he chose a stage she couldn't escape. At the monthly HOA meeting, packed with neighbors in the community hall, he sat quietly until it was his turn to speak. Lauren lounged in the back, arms crossed, confident as ever. Mark cleared his throat, steady and calm. He began with simple words. About trust, about betrayal. The room leaned in, not knowing the storm he was about to unleash. Mark laid the folder on the table and slowly opened it. Page by page, he showed hotel receipts, late-night charges, and the bank transfers draining their savings. Gasps spread across the room, heads turned toward Lauren, whose face went pale under the fluorescent lights. Neighbors who once pitied Mark now stared at her with open disgust. Mark didn't raise his voice or hurl accusations, he simply let the papers speak. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Lauren's smirk vanished, and the power she thought she held collapsed in front of everyone. Lauren bolted from her chair, muttering excuses no one wanted to hear. She stormed out, but the damage was already done. Neighbors turned back to Mark, some clapping his shoulder, others nodding in quiet respect. For weeks, he had been the man pitied for the flowers in the trash. Now he was the man who exposed the truth with dignity instead of rage. Across town, Peterson's name was already spreading through gossip and social media. The humiliation Lauren once staged for Mark had flipped entirely. This time, she was the one being watched. In the days that followed, the fallout spread quickly. Dr. Peterson resigned from his position under quiet pressure, his clinic's shady funding drawing unwanted attention. Lauren packed her things and left the neighborhood, whispers following her at every turn. Meanwhile, Mark walked with a new kind of calm. Neighbors waved, invited him for coffee, and treated him with genuine respect instead of pity. The man once shamed in front of everyone now stood taller, not because he sought revenge, but because he let the truth speak for itself. His dignity had been restored. One crisp morning, Mark paused by the same trash bin where his roses had been thrown weeks earlier. The memory no longer burned, it felt like a scar that had healed. He planted a small rose bush by his porch, pressing the soil firmly with his hands. It wasn't about winning Lauren back, it was about reclaiming himself. Each bloom would remind him that dignity can't be discarded like garbage. Betrayal had stripped him bare, but truth rebuilt him stronger. As the first flower opened, he finally felt free. If this story has touched your heart, please consider subscribing. Your support truly means the world to us.